Number 67, John W. Terry et al., Petitioners versus Ohio.
So this is everything you need to know about Terry versus Ohio. We are going to go over what the case is.
The facts in this case are these. This incident occurred at 2:30 in the afternoon, broad daylight, in the downtown section of Cleveland, Ohio. The police officer in this case, one Martin McFadden, noticed two Negro males standing at the corner of 14th Street in the city of Cleveland, where Euclid Avenue and Huron Road intersect. These two streets, if the court pleased, form a triangle at the apex of East 14th Street. The police officer was approximately 100 feet away from where these two men were. He said, well, to tell you the truth, I didn't like them.
Didn't like them?
Yes.
So for this case to continue, for us to continue down the road of this case, you first have to buy that Martin McFadden was a super cop and he predicted a stick-up. We have to start from there to have a case at all whatsoever.
What kind of a neighborhood is that generally in Cleveland? A business neighborhood?
That is our downtown section, the busiest section of the city, Your Honor.
Downtown retail stores and offices and so on?
Yes, Your Honor. And the testimony of the police officer was that there was business as usual in the downtown center of the city. Stores were open. There were pedestrians on the street. The police officers stated that he positioned himself in the doorway of a department store by the name of Rogoff. For a period of 10 to 12 minutes, he observed these two males at the corner. Alternately, each made 5 or 6 trips over to two stores located on Huron Road. He said that he didn't know whether it was the United Airlines store or the Diamond store.
We're going to go over the battle between Reuben Payne and Louis Stokes. And really, Reuben Payne just lays a shellacking on Louis Stokes. And Louis Stokes lays a great big goose egg in the arguments for Terry.
They were standing on the corner conversing. Then, because of their not continuing in the flow of regular commerce, he observed one of the petitioners walk away from the other one and proceed approximately 100 feet west up the street.
Alternately, each made 5 or 6 trips over to two stores located on Huron Road.
He noticed the unusual activity of this petitioner peering in the jewelry store or the airline office there. That was something in the vicinity of the airline office or the jewelry store which excited the petitioner's attention in some manner or in some way.
When you listen to the Terry v. Ohio oral arguments, raw dog, just straight, they're only 1 hour, you'll hear that the number of times that Terry, Katz, and Chilton went over and looked in that Diamond store window, it exaggerates constantly throughout the entire trial. Of course, Louis Stokes never pushes back on this, and the only time it's ever mentioned is when Thurgood Marshall mentions it later in the trial.
He then returned to his companion on the corner, had a conversation with his companion. His companion, in turn, alternately proceeded up the street and conducted himself in the very same manner. That they alternated in this way 4 or 5 times. That thereupon, a third man came from across the street and had a conversation with them. After having a conversation with them, that the third man returned back across the street and stationed himself there. That these individuals then engaged in the conduct which I have described previously, 4 or 5 additional trips after that. Making the total number of trips, they then went across the street. The 3 men came together, at which time they were having a conversation, at which time the officer had concluded that they were casing the establishment for a stick-up.
I don't care if they went back and forth 4 times or 50 times or 100 times. We have the right to assemble in the United States of America. We have the right to assemble. The Colfax Massacre was based on black people assembling. Most of the 1967 massacres were based on black people assembling.
The police officer then says, I then went over to the 3 men. I said to them, I'm a police officer. What are your names? In the first instance, he said, they gave it to me quick. In all other places in the record, he says, they mumbled something. He said, at this, I then reached and got Terry. I spun him around, holding him in front of me. I then began to pat him down. He says, I felt inside of his top coat what felt to be the handle of a gun.
The cop testified, I didn't like him, so he ran over and grabbed him. That's against your Fourth Amendment right. That's why Terry v. Ohio is the most liberty-stripping ruling that affects us the most. The exact same thing that happened to John Terry, that Martin McFadden did to John Terry, can now happen to you. It's the exact same thing. A cop can look at you and be suspicious of you, and it's always probable cause.
This officer testified further, though, that he felt that they might be casing the place for a stick-up. Then the court then inquired of him specifically if he had ever, and by the way, this police officer had been a police officer for 39 years and a detective for 35 years.
What did they say? They said Martin McFadden had been a cop for 39 years. And they do this big emphasis on it. And so let's go back. He stops John Terry in 1963. So we can go back to 1923 is when Martin McFadden started being a cop, 1924. So what was going on in 1923, 1924? Prohibition. Before Brown versus Board of Education, police were the lynchmen. If you broke the black codes, police were the lynchmen in America.
If people, the public, would let the police force handle the situation, I believe the integration would not be omitted.
Black people in America aren't even free. So Martin McFadden and all the Supreme Court personnel, they're still being influenced by the Jim Crow Act. So these guys are raised, look at the years they're born. These guys are raised watching that Jim Crow Act that believe that black people are feeble-minded. So Martin McFadden starts being a cop in 1930, and then in 1954, black people are free. And 9 years later, McFadden sees John Terry, says he didn't like how they look. Well, there's no shocker to that. That's not a surprise.
The court specifically asked him if he had, during his 39 years as a police officer, ever previously observed anyone casing a place. He said no, he had not. Asked if he had ever arrested anyone for casing a place. In his 39 years, he said that he had not.
He helps make the case for the state.
I then reached inside the coat and tried to remove the gun. I could not remove the gun. I therefore took the entire coat off of him and then took the gun out of the coat. At this point, he says, I ordered the three of them into the store. As I walked through the doorway, I said to the store personnel, order the wagon. He later explained that ordering the wagon means you are then under arrest.
Just because a cop is suspicious of you doesn't give him the right to walk over and grab you. There's no probable cause. If you understand the Bill of Rights as written, this case should be thrown out right here.
Once inside the store, the three men were ordered up against the wall, whereupon he then searched Chilton. Inside of Chilton's top coat, he also found a loaded revolver. He searched the third male Katz, upon whom he found nothing. He then caused these men to be removed from the haberdashery to Cleveland's police station. When they arrived at the police station, they were then booked for investigation. Sometime late the next day, after having been interrogated the following morning, these men were then charged officially late the second day with carrying concealed weapons. The police officer testified further, reference to questions propounded to him having to bear on the question of probable cause. We asked him, did you know any of these men? No. Had you ever seen any of these men previously? No. Had anyone given you any information regarding them? No. He was then asked what had attracted his attention to them. He said, well, to tell you the truth, I didn't like them.
Looking at someone and saying, I don't like the way you look. What was the attitude and the sentiment of white people in the cities in the early 1960s in America?
I don't like it.
Why not?
Well, I just don't think it's right. If I think people in Mississippi are ready for that, then they'll say they are.
You agree in this?
I think that we were better off before it started.
Well, I think they should have stayed where they was at and just trying to stir up trouble. That's all it is. They should have stayed where they belong.
Well, I don't think none of us like it. I mean, I just think we ought to have open season on all of them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to last too long before the people down here get a little antagonized with it, and they're going to take it into their own hands.
Up to the point where he spun Terry around. Had he done anything outside what a policeman might properly do?
No, he had done nothing outside of what a policeman might ordinarily do.
Now, if then at that juncture he had reason to believe they might be armed, Did he have to complete his questioning first, or could he frisk them?
I would say, under the circumstances presented to me, that he did not, under those circumstances, have the right to lay hands on this citizen. And
this would be because you do not think the record shows that he had any reason to believe they had weapons?
No, that he didn't have. I'm saying that the point that you lay your hands on the citizen and you begin to exercise dominion over that citizen on the streets by spinning him around, in order for you to do this, that you must have the probable cause that is required to place a person under arrest, because this person is substantially under your custody, your dominion.
Then you mean he can't frisk for weapons without probable cause to arrest? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Pay very close attention. This next part is where we all lose our liberty, where the Fourth Amendment is washed away. Pay very close attention.